everyone. My name is Melinda. I'm from the asylum group in Lund, Asylgruppen Lund, a group that works for refugees' rights in Sweden. Welcome everyone to this demonstration, which goes under the name Day Without Deportation. We're here to show Europe that we don't accept a closing of the borders. We're here to keep on fighting against racism, against deportation, and for a world, a Europe without borders. This demonstration is organized as a part of the European Social Forum 2008 Action Network. And the people who organize this are members of local groups from different cities in Sweden, people who are asylum seekers themselves or work with asylum seekers for their rights. And thank you all to the people who attended the manifestation or the so-called champagne breakfast this morning at the Swedish Migration Board here in Malmö. Yeah, it was a very good happening. During the manifestation, we handed out pretended rejection to an asylum applicant, which is a satire text in which we want to point out the absurdum in the treatment of asylum seekers by the Swedish Migration Board. Here today we will listen to several speakers, and we will also listen to speakers along the way at Davids Hall, outside the City Hall, and outside the Swedish Migration Board, where we will end up later. Our first speakers are Maja Sager and Maria Svensson from the asylum group in Malmö, Asylgruppen Malmö.
We already know. We already have all the facts. I know and you know what is going on along the borders of this fortress called Europe. We know that people drown in the Mediterranean Sea every week. We know that people have to put their life savings or even their lives in the hands of smugglers to cross the borders. We know that the police and military forces guarding the borders use violent and militaristic methods. We know that there are no legal or regular ways for people in need of protection or a better life to cross these borders without putting their lives at risk. We also know what is going on the inside. We know that the people who manage to enter are treated as non-human, that their grounds for asylum are consistently disregarded, that their basic human rights are violated, and that millions of people live permanently in a Europe that demand their labor force but reject their presence as human beings with rights to political, human and civil rights. We know that Europe once again is filled with detention camps. We know this. We know that people are killed when deported. We know that children spend their whole childhood in the excluded margins of the European welfare states. We know that the way we are slowly getting used to this division of people into those whose lives count and those who do not is too easy, too fast. Last year, the employees at the Migration Board in a city nearby Malmö celebrated the deportation of a Russian family with a bottle of champagne. This morning, we celebrated this deportation-free day, drinking champagne outside the Migration Board and trying to block the daily tasks of the people inside the building. This morning, we tried to make a clear statement against the Migration Board that we do not approve, that we detest their daily work. And yes, we do say that you have a personal responsibility. And no, we do not see any fruitful way to dialogue on this with those in power. We wanted to block the Migration Board today to remind everyone that the racism and exclusion are not only inherent to the capitalist nation-state system, but that they are actually put into action by the everyday acts of professionals and citizens. We wanted to block the Migration Board to emphasize the individual responsibility for the upholding of the border machinery, a machinery that is the product of many people's everyday acts and obedience. The border machinery requires that people follow orders.
Last week, I read a short note in the local newspaper. A process officer at the Migration Board here in Malmö was suspended from work because she had manipulated information in a computer in a way that gave permanent residence permit to an asylum seeker. I don't know anything about what actually happened or why the process officer did this. But I choose to understand it as a statement from the inside. A statement about the fact which asylum seekers and refugee rights activists have known for a long time already, that the exclusion, the rejections and the racism is solidly built into the migration policy. But the deportation machinery is based on the everyday participation in the construction of physical borders and emotional boundaries. And when we understand the way our daily participation is a condition for the upholding of this racist system, we will also understand that the system could be torn down if everyone refused to participate.
If the police refuse to register fingerprints, to control, chase and deport, if the bureaucrats at the Migration Board refuse to be suspicious towards asylum seekers, to reject asylum applications and to organize deportation trips, if no one worked at detention camps or with transports of detained refugees, if airport employees refuse to take part in forced deportations, if doctors and nurses always attended to everyone, and if teachers and principals always let all children into schools and daycare, if everyone gave residence permits to everyone, every day.
To some extent, this is already happening. A few months ago, a pilot refused to take up with a man set for deportation on board. Daily, social workers, nurses, doctors, teachers, lawyers, activists, friends, relatives, and fellow citizens do whatever they can to expand people's possibilities of staying and living.
It is time for many more to stop working for borders and start working towards rights for everyone. Who do we want to be? Do we want to be the prison guards, or do we want to act in solidarity beyond borders? That is the choice we have to make.
Now we have reached the end of this speech, and it is time for me to put forward some of our concrete claims on policy changes. And of course, we in the Malmö Asylum Rights Group demand a lot of concrete changes. We demand that the deportations to Afghanistan, Iraq and Eritrea immediately are stopped, and that asylum seekers from these countries get permanent resident permits. We demand that everyone living in Sweden, with or without residence permit, get access to health care. And there are so much more that we demand. Just asylum procedures, basic rights for undocumented migrants, close the detention camps, and so on and so forth.
But our most basic claims would be shut down and open up. Shut down the Migration Board, shut down Sweden as we know it. Open up the borders, open up for anti-national solidarity. Thanks.